This is Transparency, a podcast by Gender Dysphoria Alliance, hosted by Aaron Kimberly and Aaron Terrell. Each week we'll be joined by people who have personal or professional experience with gender dysphoria and physical transition. We'll also discuss how our trans experiences relate to the concept of gender identity. Join us for a compassionate yet heterodox approach to the question of trans. NJada is a detransitioned man who began social transition in 2013 at the age of 19 and HRT the following year. He ultimately detransitioned in 2015. Since, he has been gradually working through stages of self-acceptance. After taking a break from the whole topic of gender for a time, he began to get in touch with other detransitioners in late 2018. And in 2022, he began to write and speak publicly about his experience on Twitter and Substack. He hopes to share what he's learned about the draw to identify as a woman and how he has come to accept and even love being a man. And here's our conversation with NJada. Welcome back to Transparency. I'm Aaron Terrell. He is Aaron Kimberly, and we are very happy to have NJada here with us today telling his story. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So like we were saying before we recorded, why don't we just start with you kind of telling your story, like early life, adolescence, when the whole transition appeal came into the picture, and then obviously your subsequent detransition, and everything all in between. So just tell your story as you see fit.
All right. Yeah. Like I said, I'm gonna. There's a lot of elements to things, so I'm gonna try not to get too caught up on things, on all the details. But I guess the way I would start is, I mean, just from a really early age, it's pretty clear that I mean, looking back on it, it's very clear that I um, there was a lot of disconnection in the family. And I try not to go into too much detail about my family. I mean, my parents are good people, um, but I still don't totally understand like why there was that. But I just didn't feel the kind of like closeness looking back, like why I didn't like seem to have this I guess trust, openness with my parents. Um, but that's something that I think has been a really important part of the whole. Um, Everything that led to the gender identity confusion, was there was kind of I found that I had to be really emotionally independent from a really early age, even though I was clearly dependent on my parents. They took care of me, they took care of my material needs, made sure I got a good education. um, when I look back on it, it's clear that it was uh, had a strong sense that like I just take care of myself emotionally. If I have difficult feelings, I'm not going to just have no, it wasn't even a question to like really bring it to my parents unless it became like absolutely necessary. Like if there was some sort of like material thing at stake, like I actually had to tell them. Um, so
Were
I
they
think
kind of
that
they kind of like emotionally closed off people? Is that what you mean?
um my mom she got really depressed after I was born. She was
Oh,
really depressed for a while, and I mean, she struggled with depression, and then my parents' relationship got, I mean, it doesn't seem like it was great uh, for quite a while, but it seems that their relationship was breaking apart um, shortly after I was born. Um, Whereas my dad, but it's not like my mom was always emotionally closed off, just very inconsistent, I think.
mm,
And then, she could be she clearly cared a lot about being a good mother, but she also just sometimes was not, I think, was just emotionally absent, not available. And then my dad was really not an unemotional person. He had a very kind of uh, overdone kind of stereotypical attitudes about masculinity, though. So like he could be like silly and he could be angry. But when it came to like maybe more like sensitive, delicate emotions, um, that was kind of like, why would a boy or why would a man want to do that? Like, would a want to sing or dance or something like that? Um, and I think that I mean, from what I've learned and insight that I've gained about my my psychology is that well, when I mean, a child is always dependent on their parents or their caregivers to figure out how to emotionally regulate themselves. And if you don't have the trust to turn to your parents for difficult feelings, then you're just never going to learn how you actually regulate difficult emotions. So I think I had this sense like I don't really trust them when it comes to my emotions. I know that they'll take care of me with other stuff, but like when it comes to like personal, I just didn't have like a personal sense of like relationship with them. I still kind of struggle to understand why, although it all kind of makes sense with just like when I think about it, there's things that are strange about them. Both my parents, and their relationship was falling apart. They didn't seem like a good match. It's not like there were like anything bizarre about them or that they were like really abusive or something. So I think that when a child is trying to be emotionally independent, like from a really early age, like toddler age, um, they can't do it. You don't gain independence until you first dependent on someone else to teach you how to become independent. And I think that that's what got me stuck in my head, became a very cerebral person. I never stopped being an extremely emotional person. I've always been an extremely emotional person. I have a really like rich inner life, vivid inner life, really creative. Drawing was like the drawing and telling stories were something like I took up when I was really little. I was like instead drawing in my class. I eventually took up music as my main like art form. Um, but uh, but the further along I went in childhood, the more I um, kind of kept my rich emotional life inside and art, but on my body, like it was super awkward and weird to show emotions because I was like felt like my emotions would just be either really awkward or they'd be like over the top or bizarre. It's like by the time I was like puberty, middle school, um, it was sort of like I don't even know what it would look like if I was to be emotionally free. But it probably would just be bizarre and jarring, and maybe really like feminine or something. It was hard to tell. But I mean, look up just a little bit, when I was in elementary school, I was like super um, um, expressive. I, I maybe what I would get really, really shy around adults. I would be really expressive around my friends. And it was sort of like, I don't know, maybe if I was like playing with my friends over here, but there were adults around or something, I might be like a little bit guarded. And then if I was just with my friends, I'd be like really expressive. And then like the closer adults were around, the more like the less expressive I would get. Then eventually, once it got closer to puberty, now being like expressive and fun and creative and silly is no longer what friendship is about. Now it's all about being cool and being sexy. Um, like then also I became like afraid of my peers too. I was social anxiety. I just bottled up like all of my emotions. So by the time I was in middle school, in high school, um, I was known as like the really creative kid, or one of the really like artistic, like really good at drawing. Especially like I drew like comics all throughout um, elementary school and would still draw like these really like silly, like surrealistic, bizarre comics and stuff in middle school. And I was really good at playing the drums, which was probably the only thing that made me cool at all was being a good drummer. Um,
It's like the most
but
masculine instrument too.
yeah, yeah, right, and very physical. Very really got a lot of physical energy out of me and rhythm. And that yeah, I like I wish that I got into dancing at that time too. But drumming was a great thing for me. Eventually got into guitar and piano, but I was known as a really good drummer. And but still people saw me as being like unemotional. People would it seemed like everybody had a slightly different take on me. Like I just didn't really know where I fit in. Because people would see me as being unemotional in like a peaceful way, like I'd be like really chill. Then other people would see me as unemotional, like they'd think I'm angry, or they would think that I was just kind of like off-putting, like what, like he just doesn't have any emotions, like what's going on with him, kind of. But I don't know. But at the same time, like I don't know, I got along with a number of different groups. Like I kind of like mingled around a bit. Um, I don't know, it just seemed like nobody really knew what to make of me. I didn't really pay attention to other people very closely. Like I had a weird way of well, okay, so in middle school I had this terrible phase of staring at girls too much because when I first started going through puberty, I like could not handle how like cute I thought girls were. Um, And there were like a couple of girls who I crushed on, and I mean, I just stared at them too long. Just stared at them too much. It wasn't good. And I got like mortified by that and had zero concept of like how to, maybe make a girl like me because I was just way too nervous. Like I couldn't be myself. Like I was already insecure and had social anxiety with just peers in general. But girls especially. So like a couple of times I would just like hope that some girl maybe had like noticed me and was interested, and I'd just like ask her out, and she would say no. And I'd go, okay, and move on. It just is just dumb. But um, I did manage to have like one girlfriend early in high school, um, which was not a great match, but it gave it out. We gave it a go for a couple of months, and it didn't work out. It felt weird. Um, I liked her. She liked me. Um, but I did notice that if she kind of wanted like she wanted a tall, handsome guy to like lean on, kind of girlfriend sort of thing. Um, and despite like finding her attractive, it felt like a super weird position for me to be in. Like I felt like I wanted to be in her position. So I did start to notice that kind of thing. I was 15 at that time. Um, and, you know, then there were still some girls who like I really would have loved to get to know and go out with, but was just way too nervous with them. That um I eventually well I found it incredibly painful to get rejected. And just the nerves already. I just found it way too anxiety inducing. I really like gave up on the idea of having a girlfriend about halfway through high school. Also, back up a bit in order to catch up to that part of the story. Um, I mean, I got addicted to porn like the moment pretty much I stumbled on it. When I would have been 12, maybe 13. I think it was 12, like right when puberty hit. Um, and it seemed to be this thing. I had this whole dilemma uh, about that sort of thing. Like, I mean, I felt like it was like destroying me, like instantly too, because I could feel like what a strong hold it had on me. I made like just white knuckle willpower like efforts to stop. When I was 14, I remember having like I wrote a bunch of in my journal a lot those days. Um, and I remember like almost filling a whole journal of like this time where I was like trying to like stop writing about that. And it just didn't quite including it. Like when it has that kind of a hold on you and it's like meeting some kind of psychological need or something that you don't have a healthy way of dealing with, like just sheer willpower is not going to cut it. So I had no resources, no way to like deal with that. That was just a sheer like raw emotional um, need of some kind. That I'm just like that was really showing that like I don't have a hold of my emotions. I'm not this emotionally controlled
Mhm.
person who just uses my sheer intellect to just control myself.
Puberty and
How
porn
were
kind of
you?
fuck that.
Yeah. How
Uh,
were you introduced to porn? Was it online that you just stumbled upon it, or did someone introduce you to it?
yeah, yeah. Actually, I think I remember like one time like a it was just like a friend of mine and I were like I think we were like kind of like asked like we actually like didn't know what like a vagina looked like. So we were like, wait a minute, what if we like looked up on Google like naked girl? We just did that. And then we just like stunned when we saw this picture. And from then on I was kind of like, wait a minute, this is actually available like all the time online. So it was just kind of like bound to happen, it seems like.
Just to put in the context of time, how old are you right now? So like, what year would that have been?
Oh, how old am I now?
Mhm.
I'm 30.
Okay, okay. So yeah, you definitely grew up with constant access to the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was, right around the time that like, yeah, every home had internet access. So yeah, I mean, um, sorry to go back a bit. I'm gonna really quickly get back to where I was, but in case I didn't make it clear, I was kind of like almost like overactive when I was like very young, like very expressive. I think it was sort of the embarrassment of like getting in trouble, even though like I was known like not to be like a troublemaking kid, but like I was like really distractible. Um and uh and and I just found it mortifying to be like um chastised for being like too much sort of. I think that was just one of those things that made me just like want to squash it and be like, okay, I need to just use the mind,
Live
like
internally.
clamp down, yeah. And yeah, and just had kind of the illusion that I can just like use my raw like sheer intellect to direct myself. um so yeah, that kind of accounts for the emotionlessness in middle school, high school. um and then the lack of social like sensibility that goes with that, maybe being like a good social observer in some ways, but not having the like actual concrete physical learning how to intuitively um join in on all the social games. So I kind of fancied myself somebody who doesn't need that too. Like I'm okay being alone. Um, Even though again I had friends, but I was usually pretty like reclusive. I kind of chipped in and out of my friend groups. I still have that tendency to do that when I have friend groups. Like they all get together and then I like pop in from time to time. And um, I've definitely developed a lot more socially in my 20s, as much as that's been a hard time kind of catching up. But yeah, so like um, halfway through high school, the idea of having a girlfriend just seems like that's something that happens to other people. It's not going to happen to me. Um, and I guess it was like okay, it was toward the end of middle school that I first just like thought about like oh like yeah, why is it so like embarrassing to be gay? Like it seemed like that's really sad for people who are gay, like that they have to deal with that. Then I started to just like be introduced to like um different sexualities and the idea of different gender identities and things around that time too. And I was in like the gay straight alliance in my high school. So it was kind of there. It was just from other students. It wasn't like online stuff. I didn't get into online communities when it came to like trans or queer. Um, I just kind of learned that from like a pretty small group of students. But some of them were kind of kind of radical minded, sort of. You got
Oh,
something there?
so that would have been like about 15 years ago, right? So again, I'm just trying to put this in the context of the kind of cultural shift that
Yeah, I
we
was in
went
high
through.
school between 2008 and 2012.
Okay, okay. So still that's kind of pre total wokeness, but there's still a lot
Yeah.
of kind of yeah.
Yeah, I look back and I mean I still see some of these people on Facebook and their posts and I'm like, oh yeah, these were the kids who were kind of the pre woke kids. They really were kind of you making some of those talking points then. And it was interesting because like I sympathized with what they were saying in a lot of ways, but I also kind of I was kind of even detached from that stuff. Um like I was very sort of like yeah, like anybody can identify as, however, and like that's fine. But I wasn't always on board with a lot of their political sensibilities. It did seem kind of busybody-ish, sort of. I was not like that. I mean, I was just always like a really like passive sort of person, and so I wouldn't have really challenged them. But I was kind of like, okay, they're kind of radical. I'm not really interested in that. I just know that I have like weird gender feelings, and I just want to figure that out like for myself.
When you were
I don't.
drawn to the gay straight alliance, did you and you were saying that kind of around the same time as when you had that girlfriend and you were kind of like, I don't want to be the boyfriend, I want to be the girlfriend. Were you aware of that those two feelings were the same source?
Um, no, I mean, when I think about just like what the experience is like, it's kind of just like, well, girls are pretty, so why wouldn't I want to be pretty? So I mean, it kind of feels like it is the same thing, but it feels like it is kind of just that simple.
Mhm.
But I
Did you
didn't.
imagine? Did you imagine that people would somehow treat you differently if you were a girl?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I started thinking that thought, you know, pretty much probably following that time with her. Actually, I think I was already like identifying as bi at the time, and knowing that you guys might know, I guess, what these terms mean. I'm not like all like up on like the sexology stuff, but I've heard the term pseudo bisexual. I really feel like that applies to me. Um, like, I basically I was, perfectly comfortable with like being with a guy, but it's not like I had like a draw, like a draw to their appearance. Like I wasn't sexually attracted to guys. I just felt like, well, I'd be comfortable being with a guy and like it would be kind of cute to be like two two boys together, sort of. Um, but it wasn't until quite a bit later, like when I started identifying as trans, that I started to see like that I actually felt like would enjoy like the complementarity of being like feminine and having like a strong like sort of dominant, so to speak, man. Uh, uh, but yeah, it was there was just kind of like a whole mix of interpretations. I didn't really settle on one at the time in high school, like the later half of high school, that I started thinking. Um, like I started wearing like skinny jeans and wearing like my mom's sweaters. I was about like I liked just dressing like androgynously. I didn't really think like I'm gonna like actually dress like a woman. Um, but I liked the very androgynous look. I really liked the word androgynous. Uh, I thought of myself as like a feminine guy. Um, but then it was sort of like, well, that feels good. Um, that feels right. But then I was like, then again, like it feels like the only reason why I'm thinking I'm a feminine guy or an androgynous guy is because I have a male body. So this is like what I have to work with. But it's like if I was born female, like I would just be like whatever about the androgyny, like I would just be feminine. Um, and I don't think that I don't think that I thought in like crazy like stereotypes or anything. Like at the gay straight alliance, and I know well like that there are like masculine girls and all this stuff, and that I have probably my masculine side, but I was like, it seems like there's very little about my personality that's masculine. It just seems like um not all girls are super feminine, but like the average girl uh likes to be feminine. And so I it seems like, well, I would have just been like an average girl. Um and when I started to think about that, that was really devastating to me to think, well, what if I had just been, like I said on the documentary, what if I had been born female? Uh, it was just whoa, like actually that uh, it was kind of like a thought that was like a little bit too much to bear in a way, like just the fact that it was a 50-50 chance and that it just seemed like everything about me would have just been very simple and straightforward. Whereas now I have to be this like androgynous, gender non-conforming, queer, ambiguous sort of whatever. And I was like, maybe that's kind of cool. I mean, maybe that's cool to be, it's unique. But I was like, I mean, after a certain point, like that's kind of less exciting being like super weird and out there and unique. As much as I'm like into like all this like outsider like art and weird avant-garde art and stuff. I was like, I mean, I feel like I would just like to like have some normalcy and that there would have just been normalcy if I was a girl. I wouldn't have had to make a show out of it, um, or like draw attention to myself. I could have just slipped right in. That was my sense.
Did you also feel
It's
like you're
true, but
like being emotionally expressive would have been acceptable if you were born a girl as well?
yeah, yeah, I think that was what it was all about
Okay.
with my artistic sensibilities. I mean, I wished that my like, I mean, there was like nothing that mattered to me more than art and music. And it felt like, I would say to people like the like you can get a better idea of what I'm like by listening to the music I write than like anything that I could tell you. Um, and I wrote like again like really weird music. Some of my music was very like felt like it was like even my way of like laughing at myself. Like it wasn't intended to be anything in particular. It just was like the way the music came out. But I thought like I wished so much that I would like less restrained about my music. I felt like my music was so weird and so just kind of raw and I let it be whatever it turns out to be because uh, yeah, there was just like no other way for me to just be completely like unfiltered. Sort of. I wished that it could have been like maybe more of like a performance artist that I could have like maybe that I could sing or dance. Something that would bring together my whole body that would be expressive. So um yeah,
We've
I'm
we've
not
heard from others that we've interviewed too, that theme of normalcy, right? That you've got this cluster of personality traits, some of which are probably just intrinsic to you, and some, probably developed through environment, which is the case with all of us, right? But I have just noticed that theme that in a lot of people that we've spoken with, just wanting to be normal, right? Trying to make sense of your own personal characteristics. Some of those may not seem typical for your sex, at least to yourself or maybe to others around you, and just this drive, I just want to fit in and be normal and be able to socialize with other people.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's a unfortunate and unfair stereotype that sure is true a lot of the time that people who identify as trans are like making a big show of it, trying to draw all the attention to themselves. I mean, I can be that way in my own ways. There are ways that like, yeah, I wish people would notice me and I want to um draw attention to myself, or a lot of ways like looking at my childhood too, like that I really wanted to endear myself to people. Um, that was a big thing. That was the way that a lot of times that I fit into friend groups, whether or not they would have even realized that I was doing that. A lot of times I was sort of like the shy, sort of kind of the sweet, shy friend who like people want to look out for. Which came through pretty clearly when I was transitioning, as at other times. Um, but yeah, yeah, I think, it's all a way of trying to figure out how I fit in. And I think sometimes that can take the form of feeling like you need to make some kind of an extreme statement, trying to break out of um you're trying to break out of where you've been fit into. It is, yeah, it is very complicated.
So what was the transition process like for you?
Yeah, I'll get there really quick, actually.
Okay.
I was remembering there's one thing I forgot to kind of tie up there. So when I brought up the porn thing, that created a big dilemma for me. Not only did I feel very gross about it, and it was kind of it really fragmented my mind a lot. It was kind of like this is this gross animal bodily thing that just my body does, and I can't seem to get a hold of it. And like I shouldn't feel bad about it because it just is, but like I do feel bad. I like wish that I could have a hold of it, but for some reason this sucks. I don't know why I can't like stop. I really like it was one of the things that I was like most disappointed with myself about. But it was sort of like if I can just have that over here, I can like take care of that over here. Then I can go like be a person and treat people like people over here and have friends. And I had a certain like idealism, like, this idealistic idea about friendship that like physical attraction should have absolutely nothing to do with it, like ever. Um, and I felt like I mean it's only natural that people are going to be physically attracted to each other. That's not wrong. But um, if physical attraction to someone else like so much as factors into why you're friends with them or why you like were initially drawn to try to talk to them, like then you don't actually know that there's a real basis to your friendship. Because what if that attraction isn't there? What, you're not going to care about them as a person anymore? And
Seems
that's
like you kind
a
of developed a very negative feeling about like sexuality in general because you associate it
yeah,
with porn, right? So
yeah,
there's this dirty bad thing, and then there's pure connection with people, and you can't.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that's, like, I mean, part of the reality is like, I mean, um, it is a stereotype that women don't struggle with porn. Like a lot of research is showing that there's a lot of women that people thought that struggle with that, but it still is way more men. Um, it's much more something that men struggle with, and it just seemed, and it's true to a good extent that women have more of like just control over their sexuality. Um, so that seemed to go into the kind of idealizing of girls and women. I didn't even really go into, I guess, how I seem to really idealize girls like at an early age, that there was just like a sense of like untouchability about them, like this kind of uh sort of feeling of them being pure and delicate, but in a very like to me, it seemed like a very like ennobling kind of way, like that they're special. But then in the middle of childhood, like early childhood, and also it's just kind of like girls are dumb. I definitely went through that. Was just with the boys, and everything was very easy and simple in that way. Um, but yeah, sexuality was a big, yeah, like that's so much of I think why I transitioned was to get away from sexuality, like period. Um, and I felt yeah, I just had this ideal that it would be much better to have no sexual needs, and that if I have to, like if I just unfortunately have to take care of it over here with porn, like then I'll get it out of my system, um, and then I'll yeah focus on people. And so I guess I saw, that part of me as well. This is the conscious part of me. This is the part of me that's making decisions. I'm choosing to focus on friendship and the goodness of friendship and people. So that's me. It's what I decided to do. This other stuff, this is what my body does. That's not me. Um, like in a way, like it kind of breaks down like that. Um, and yeah, I mean that good part seems to get associated with women, femininity, um, and yeah, okay, yeah. So I was, dressing a little bit androgynous, a little bit feminine in high school. But then when I noticed actually girls were a little more interested in me, like some girls actually just very quickly started to express attraction toward me when I started dressing that way, growing my hair out a bit. I mean, honestly, kind of the way that I'm dressing right now, like not that much different. Um, not in any really like dramatic way, but it just before I was a bit like just kind of slobbish and didn't really care that much about my appearance. Um, and when I noticed that girls kind of like paid attention to me more for this short time, I was like, wait a second, that's bad though. Like they're talking to me because I'm attractive. So I actually like I wanted to I really felt comfortable like dressing that way. Like I like kind of the tight clothes, like not, again, nothing like crazy, but just like, just the tightness of like skinny jeans and girl sweaters um and the long hair. And I just stopped dressing that way. I cut my hair. I just tried to just dress in this like default way. And I felt like there was something really like virtuous about that. That was like the right way to be, like to not distinguish yourself with your appearance. Um, and so I did that for a while. But then when I went to college, it didn't take that long. I was within at some point later in the first year of college, and I went right after high school. That I was like, um, well, I was going to like now I was going to the Pride group there, and it's a bigger group. There's a bit more energy, I think, there, and and I did really kind of miss dressing that way, and I felt like I had a bit of a chance to not like reinvent myself, but just start fresh, meet a bunch of people who don't already have a set of assumptions about me. In fact, I started using a version of my first name. I won't say that is usually a girl name that a girl would use, but sometimes a boy would. But I started using that as soon as I went to college. Even though I wasn't presenting any. I was looking entirely like a guy um, at first, but I did start using that name, and then I don't know. I still was exploring like gender identity and stuff, and still feeling all the same ways. So I did start to think, um, you know, I can't remember if there was anything really specific that prompted it, but it just, yeah, eventually I started wearing some of the same, like, more androgynous, feminine sort of clothes. And, and then it was, and then just in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about all that stuff. And I had a friend who asked me, um, uh, he just asked me kind of randomly, like, kind of like impertinently. He was like, "Do you see yourself as more of a boy or a girl?" And I was like, "Well, I see myself as kind of both, but if I was to really be honest, I see myself more as a girl." And like all my friends were kind of excited about that. Um, like none of them in this particular group wasn't like all like the pride group people. Like there were some of them, maybe a couple of them were like we were. It was, but they weren't really like they just all liked the idea. They especially some of the girls like it just kind of like was like exciting. Because I think, I probably came across in a certain way that they were kind of like, yeah, I can see that. And I just kept thinking about that in the back of my head. So second year of college, I'm just dealing with a lot of uh, just tension and anxiety, social anxiety. And it just comes out of nowhere. I just had these like waves of depression. Just, no real insight into where it comes from. So I was just unhappy. I didn't really have like a great sense of direction, what I wanted to do with my life. Um, wasn't tremendously satisfied with my social life. I kept kind of going in and out of having a friend group for a while um, and then feeling distant from them. And so I started going to therapy, uh, first to the therapist that the college provided, but they only give you a couple of sessions and then they try to refer you to somewhere outside. And that was where I mentioned, like again on the Lost Boys documentary, um, that I just said, like I have these waves of depression and anxiety that comes out of nowhere. I have a lot of social anxiety, and I mentioned I was purposely like kind of like leaving this last or somewhere in the middle of a list of different things I wanted to address. I was like, I sometimes feel like I'm a girl and wish that I was a girl. Um, and I said, I really want to approach that question, but I specifically said, like, I want to approach that slowly. Because I feel like I might be trans, but that just seems like that's a huge like thing to, you know, figure out and to decide. Like that would be such a big decision to transition or and it always struck me as like it just seems like a kind of a really unrealistic task to think that with my like I have a fixed bone structure, all this stuff. I have a really deep voice. The way that I am, like it doesn't seem likely that with all the work that I would put into it, that after all that work to get myself to just sort of resemble a woman, that that would be better than if I figured out some way to make peace with being male. That was going on through my head. I don't remember exactly to what extent I laid all of that out, but I was saying that I wanted to be, you know, cautious about it. And I had the feeling that, like, because there was a part of me that really did want to just come out and just say, like, I feel like a girl. Like, I do. Like, that was the way I felt. So I was like, I feel like I'm a girl. So I'm trans. Part of me could have done that. I wanted to be cautious. And I thought though that if I had just came out and said that, I really expected like I would get kind of like a pat on the head, like, okay, like, come on, like maybe you are, but like, this is a really big decision. You cannot just jump into something like that. I assumed that, the mental health professionals would have that type of caution, both caution and openness to it, because I knew that it was becoming, more accepted. This was now 2013. And but then the therapist, he said, okay, yeah, you laid out like a list of the things that you wanted to talk about, and he said, I know that you mentioned that you want to approach that your feelings about being a girl, that you wanted to approach that slowly. He was like, I understand why you would want to take that slow, but he was like, um, that is something that I really think you're not going to want to put off. We're really going to want to hit this head on, because people who feel that way, normally those feelings don't go away. And it's becoming more and more understood by mental health professionals that the normal way that people who feel that way um, find satisfaction in life is to transition. And when I heard that, I was just sort of like, wow, I thought I was being reasonably cautious, but it turns out, oh, I mean, I guess typical of me to just be like way overcautious and be, indecisive and um, not be bold enough. Like I should, like this is a mental health professional who's looked at what lots of other people have done. Like if there were lots of people like making a crazy mistake by just jumping into this, then they would certainly know about it. So I didn't immediately jump on board, but that really like took down a ton of my like my caution that I had around it. And they said, look up, maybe other people who have gone through that and see, what their experience is like. And he said, if and if you're okay with it, like we think like you should look up like a gender therapist. So I did. Um, started seeing a therapist nearby in town who had listed on his page specialization in gender dysphoria. Um, I looked up other people who transitioned, and I just thought, yeah, I want to do that. And wow, it works for them. I didn't think it worked for many people, but apparently, like it seems like it works for so many people. So I was just on hormones or no, I was not on hormones yet. I went to like one or two sessions with this, or just like one session with this new therapist, and he had just suggested, why don't you try socially transitioning first to see how you like it. Make sure that it does feel right. So it wasn't like immediately they just like gave me hormones. I did socially transition for like 6 months first, and it felt really good. I just After I kind of like had sorted that out, like kind of established that with the therapist, I thought, well, I should go ahead and tell my mom. Definitely not going to tell my dad. But I'm gonna tell my mom. I thought it might be weird for her, but at least I could tell her, because like if I'm going to do this, like then I don't it's gonna be totally secret. Um,
Just before you move on too much from that experience with the gender therapist, so this is somebody that was advertising that they specialized in gender dysphoria, but it took only 2 visits for them to recommend a social transition. I mean, how much did that therapist sort of, because obviously you've been very thoughtful about this and have explored all these different variables that led to those feelings and your decision, but did that therapist help facilitate any of that exploration for you?
I mean, we talked about it a lot. Um, yeah, I think back and I can't really remember that much like what we even talked about. I mean, I think in a lot of ways like um we were talking about because I was still just trying to deal with like just depression, anxiety, just very like vague, general like emotional issues that I didn't yet understand. And I would just kind of talk about whatever was on my mind. And a lot of what was on my mind was transitioning, but it was sort of like, why don't you go ahead, if you like the idea, which I did, like I was like waiting for in a way like a a reason to be able to just, do it. Socially transition. It sounded exciting and fun. And then the idea was we'll be talking about it as you go, sort of. So I mean, we did talk about it, but yeah, it's not like there was any like challenging about it. It was more. In fact, I recently found the letter that he wrote after 6 months that he wrote to the endocrinologist to approve me for HRT, and he mentioned like that something to the effect that like she is still we're still meeting so that she can like talk about kind of the struggles of accepting and kind of like accepting this uh, having gone so much time in life like not living according to her true identity sort of it was more kind of just taken for granted that like this is the way that you feel. Like what else could it be other than that you're trans? And the emotional problems that you're going through is because you're mourning the fact that I mean it's not like he's simply telling me this. Like I've started to really feel this way. Like I was mourning like like I wish that I had gone through all the steps of being born female, being a little girl, getting to, making friends as a little girl, growing up, having, going through all these stages, all these, uh, all the steps of maturity and just kind of being able to naturally, um, uh, mix in as a woman among women. So you mentioned like, that she like in the letter, like she mourns that she didn't get to go through girlhood and all that. So I'm sorry, I forget, what was your question?
Just what, what it was like in the room with the therapist, and did the
Oh,
therapist help facilitate your process? I mean, because you've obviously gone through a very self-reflective process. Did anyone at any time help you with that process, or is that just something that you've done on your own?
yeah, pretty much. I mean, for the most part, had to do it on my own. I mean, I think, just as I mean, it's weird because it's like, as a therapist, the whole like formation thing, it's just kind of like this one exception to like how you actually can effectively be a therapist. Like he was able to help me like talk through emotional issues in general. Um, working through like a tumultuous social life and stuff like that. But yeah, but then when it comes to feeling not able to identify with my own sex, that's not really something to discuss. It's just obvious why I would feel that way. It's because I'm really a woman. Uh, so yeah, I mean, it was like I was building up a certain like a fair amount of insight about myself. Probably even was helpful to why I detransitioned pretty quickly too, because I turned back pretty quick. Um, but yeah, it's not like he was helping me directly to resolve that.
Mhm. So how long had you been on hormones?
Yeah, so I was on the hormones for like 15, 16 months. And I'm super lucky. Like I've known guys who were on hormones for a shorter amount of time than that and were left with permanent um effects, and I wasn't. Like as far as I can tell, like there's no permanent effects left on my body. I've had my hormone levels checked since then, and they're back to normal. So really grateful for that.
Good.
I heard in the documentary um, when you were trying to live as a woman, you were very, very aware of your maleness at that time, right? And was that kind of part of the motivation to detransition? Because you were basically saying that, like, I can't undo this deep, like, I think maybe you understood it as male socialization, but now you kind of probably come to realize that it's just, no, just a fact of biology. Um,
Um, I mean, I think it's both. I've always felt like
well,
it's
sure, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I've always felt like yeah, you can't really separate the two that much. Like you're born male, and society always receives males and females differently. Um, of course, if you're passing very well, people will receive you differently, but then you still went through a whole different socialization leading up to that time, and that's going to change the way that you see yourself, um and that's going to affect the way that others will receive you. And um yeah, I mean, it was, but yeah, I think there's a lot about biology to it too. Like I just have a very like inherently male, masculine sort of personality, even if I have certain things that you could call feminine. Um, but that was a big part of the difficulty that I had was, I mean, almost everybody that I talked to accepted me as a trans woman, as a woman. People were super respectful to me. Like nobody gave me a hard time. The only person who had a hard time with it was my dad, and he like really surprisingly just kind of went along with it after a while. I think because like you guys I mentioned, yeah, in the documentary, like my mom kind of was like like you're not stepping in this, like this is who she is. And I don't know exactly what she said to him, but it was like clear that she said some things to him. And I mean, he told me that she like later on that she like it was very insistent about it. um but yeah, I mean, he was like devastated when he first heard about it. He couldn't talk to me for like a couple of weeks, and um he like sent a message saying that he loved me, but like he like wasn't able to talk to me for a while. And eventually we got like things went back. And then treating me like his daughter. And surprisingly, sometimes like it almost seemed like he almost kind of convinced himself because it was maybe just like devastating for him. Um, it was like the only way to be okay with that was to say, okay, I guess you're a woman. Like, um, you're not. It's not that my son, is doing this. It's or something like that. But and oddly, me and my dad and I kind of got a little bit closer during that time. Um, like became a little bit more honest with each other. My parents had just split um, just after high school, like right after I turned 18. And I when I would go back for the summer from school, I would usually stay with him. And we kind of did get like a little bit closer at that time. Um, but yeah, people, yeah, other than that, like everybody, like bent over backward to like show me respect, and everybody wanted to be friendly to the trans person, and the girls were insistent that the boys better be like nice and they better use the pronouns and all of that stuff. Um, and but yeah, I found even with a lot of the people who were like really on board with the queer theory stuff, um, like I wasn't convinced that they were convinced that I was a woman. Like even though like they to the minds they're like it's woman, like it's how this works. She says she's a woman, she is a woman. Um, I think it's awesome. Go you. Um, but I think people just are not really like aware of all the social minutia that all the little like minutia and social interactions that everybody treats males and females differently. And like even if you're even if you accept the ideology or whatever, like you can't really change your instincts. So even the people who were the most willing to treat me as a woman, like I wasn't convinced that they saw me as a woman. But I couldn't like um, blame them for it. I couldn't like be mad at them for it. They were doing everything they could. I didn't want it to be the sort of thing where people have to do me this favor. It was like again, it was like I just wanted it to be like the most natural and normal thing possible for me to just be female and have always have been female, and that it not ever like have been a thing. And that to me was like that's what makes gender so significant to people, is because it's such a foundational part of how we socialize and interact with each other. And I was like, it will never be that I'll have that natural sort of slipping into the category of woman, even if society is so kind to me that they will accept me that way. They can't do it. They can't make themselves do it. I can't, make myself do it. Um, so that, yeah, it was, things like that just made me think like this will be a lifelong uphill battle. Yeah, geez, like maybe I was kind of right like the first time around thinking about this, that um as much as it's really hard to imagine how I would be okay with being a guy, um that must be more realistic. Expect like somehow one day figuring out be okay with being male, because I am male. At least like there has to be some possibility there. Like if I'm male, like there must be some possibility to figure that out. Whereas, I'll never be a woman. So that by its very nature will have to be a continual battle. So I got that was really kind of impressed upon me. I mentioned in my interview with Benjamin Boyce while I was on LSD, and was tripping with a friend of mine who had a very bad memory problems. So she would, in the most sincere way, forget that he was trans, um, and I knew that it like wasn't her fault and all of that. Um, and like she would, treat me like like we're girlfriends, but then it would slip, and then I would see how sincere it was though. but that she still I could still see like that she really liked me though. Like she you know, and that it was, I guess it kind of like it kind of helped me see like, I mean, I'm likable as a guy. I don't know why I hate the male features about myself so much, but um, yeah, I've described too about how like um, I like felt like we were like Adam and Eve. Like I got down to this like very like primordial like I am man, she is woman. Um, and just, you know, just I don't know, it would take too long to try to describe, but it was getting down to like, you know, the fundamentals. And eventually I just had to have this moment of honesty and look at myself in the mirror and say, like, all right, um, I'm seeing this dilemma. Like, let's try this like totally fresh like, from the beginning. I'm gonna look at myself in the mirror and see like that I have my male features, like try it on for a second. Like if I saw him as a guy, like so I looked at myself in the mirror. I wasn't particularly dressed up or any way, so I looked like, you know, like kind of like a surfer dude sort of look is really, you know, the look that I have with my strong jaws and long hair. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, oh, it's not a bad look. It was like, um, and I just for a moment I just had to be honest about that and be like, well, this is the body I've been given, and I was really happy with it for a moment there. Is it just like just with LSD, like it does kind of like hyper focus you in on just kind of the basic kind of mechanics of your thought process, and I just like I decided to just put aside all other things, all the social embarrassment of admitting that I was wrong and all that, all of the complications that would come about, and all of this stuff about how I was gonna like, you know, then now my dad is gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna like, you know, teach you how to be a man now or something, and you know, that's gonna mean that I'm gonna like work on a farm and you know, stupid, you know, stuff that I'm thinking that's going through my head like that. Oh, I now I have to admit that I was wrong about everything. And that really like I will truly be fulfilled by being like a hardworking, you know, manual labor guy with a wife and kids, you know, just like my dad. Um, you know, and that I was just like, yeah, I put aside, I had to like cut through all of that stuff, and I was just like, like, what am I? Who am I? Am I okay with that? I was like, and I was just like, yeah, that's good. It's good to be a guy. It's not a bad thing. Um, it's actually a good thing. And I just like that. You know, it's not like I was able to maintain that feeling uh from then on, but um it was just like I saw something that I couldn't unsee still, and I could keep referring to and say, yeah, I have access to that kind of feeling, that I'm actually at home in this body. And I know that I can't be at home in a like pseudo female body. Like it's not gonna happen. So I just realized you know, I just realized this isn't a good idea to keep going with the transition. I thought, hey, you know, maybe I'll go back. I mean, the feelings are very, very strong. The wish to be female, but I thought it's definitely, at the very least, it's very unclear whether this is a good idea. So I just went off the hormones. I didn't even tell my endocrinologist or anyone. Um, Maybe I'll revisit it. Never did. Just realized that, you know, ever since then, I've really had no temptation to retransition. I've struggled with you know, all those feelings. I've tried to be really open with myself about feeling gender dysphoric, which I struggled with for years after really. I really have like no amount of gender dysphoria has ever really tempted me to transition because I just felt like I experienced so concretely like it doesn't work. It's not gonna it's not gonna achieve what I want.
It kind of sounds like you've taught yourself to deal with your dysphoria via CBT, essentially. Like it's kind of like a something you worked out internally with the aid of LSD. I really kind of like this idea of treating dysphoria with LSD because that kind of makes sense. But yeah,
Yeah,
go on.
it Yeah, it certainly wouldn't have been the one silver bullet, but it was like one thing that did probably
Kind of
bring, I
explode
think,
all the
brought
social
together.
bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I I also I was originally interested in psychedelics for like kind of like quasi spiritual reasons. I sort of thought, well, religion is BS, but psychedelics like actually does something. And like I felt like it was very important and meaningful to me to figure out what, what that could do. And ever since then, I mean, I've not taken psychedelics. I won't get into that, but I became very religious. Pretty much right after that time, I became Catholic, um, and I embraced the kind of the Catholic mystical tradition, which doesn't really work with using external drugs like that. Psychedelics it's just a very different approach to mysticism. Um, but yeah, like um, apparently something about my like being overly cerebral, internal has had its benefit. I mean, I can't deny that it has like. I mean, it had to have been there to have some sort of survival purpose for me, to keep me from being overly maybe impulsive, even though it also led me to be uh, well, just overly inhibited. Yeah, just yeah, it's been a long process trying to find that balance.
We've got a very kind of inspiring story. Yeah, appreciate hearing that.
Yeah. I don't know how long exactly you were planning on going with this because it is in a way like a sort of a seems like a natural stopping point, but I often don't end up mentioning how much there was a struggle after all of that, that I had to go through because I still was dealing with the gender dysphoria for years after. Because I do always just like to acknowledge, like, it's not like when I had, I've had these kind of epiphany moments. But like I say, like when I had these epiphany moments, like I just, went right back to all the same feelings. It's not like it just obliterated the whole like psychological complex and struggles I had, but it did give me these like memories to refer back to and to be like, yeah, it is possible for me to access some connection of feeling at home with my own male body. But then, for years afterward, I've still had a hard time with it. um, I I gave that, detransitioning, I gave that as an opportunity to stop thinking about gender. It's just like that is just a like it's just like an eyeball trying to like look at itself. It's something that matters to everybody. But it's not really something you can describe. It's like using language to explain what language is, or it's some one of these weird things. And that's what I think gender is a like a kind of language. Um, so I gave myself a break from it, like left it aside, and was very happy to just be like, I can just relax, like I'm male. Well, and that's fine. But I still was bound to come back to those feelings. And I did. Like years later, I did have to um uh well, yeah, I with HRT, I have my sex drive was like gone. That was like one of my favorite things. After that, I was thinking about a religious vocation, celibate, still trying to get away from sexuality completely. And when I, discerned a religious vocation for a while, and then found like this isn't for me, and I was like, shoot, like, do I want to get married? Which seems extremely daunting to me, but it was like, yes, obviously, I always like wanted a girlfriend, right? So it took a long time to even come back to that. I would say like 4 years after I detransitioned that I finally became open to dating. It's one thing I'm trying to get to now, but even then, I have stuff I've got to kind of deal with, I think, before I'll really be ready for that. But yeah, confronting kind of the fact that like I really am just kind of a simple, in some ways, just straightforwardly a guy, well, pretty average, straight guy. Even if I'm, have this flexibility about my sexuality. And well, okay, and and then the meta. sexuality. It's like they're just both very there. Um, when I realized that I wanted a relationship with a woman, that brought up a lot of the feelings I didn't want to feel, or like disgust about my male body. So I had to spend a lot of time of having these like again these like moments of just like feeling the disgust that I have for my body, not to like um, punish myself, but to like just notice like I am always walking around being disgusted by my male body. Like I'm never gonna really be able to fully own my body and feel at home in it until I can be not terrified of those feelings. And it was too painful sometimes to feel. It did drive me to like suicidal thoughts and like endless thought loops of I want to be a woman, but I'm not, but I want to be, but I'm not. And eventually I had to approach feeling just being able to feel the disgust and then notice, but I'm not actually disgusting. Like I'm like actually like a pretty good looking guy. And I just am a guy. There's nothing wrong with my body. Um, that's, way too abbreviated, but I do like to mention that it was like even years after I went through some of that and did have some kind of breakthrough moments where I did just like let myself sit with the disgust and kind of through it and then kind of come out of it um, sort of having this refreshing okayness with my body and then I got up and danced. There was a day where it was a physical thing that I like did. I got up and danced to some music and yeah, I just want to throw that out there because that's a long story, but I feel like that would complete it.
No, then that is very good advice about yeah to not bury the dysphoria, to be conscious of it, to address it, and just like again the CBT element of just like not talking yourself out of it, but just being like, this is my body. There's nothing wrong with it. It's what I have. This is what I can do with it. And I also think, like you said, you got up and danced, but I think just being very physically in your body in any way, like not to be like, oh, manly manual labor, but I mean like manual labor is one way to do that, to
Yeah,
just kind
it
of
very
like
well
to
could
be
be. Yeah,
in your body. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Manual labor is good, for a lot of men.
Yeah. Or anyone in general, I think females with dysphoria as well, just like just
True.
physically occupying your body and not being in your head about what you wish you could be, but just to
Right.
make use of the body that you have is very good in that regard, I think.
Yep.
Me, as someone who continues to medicalize my dysphoria away, so don't take my advice on this. But
Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. It's been great to meet you and hear your story. It's a
Yeah.
very
Thanks.
it's a very reflective story. You've obviously done a lot of inner analysis and very thoughtful process through it all.
Yeah, I really had to. So I appreciate you, yeah, giving me all the space to lay that out there.
definitely, and I think a lot of people hearing this, most of our audience are parents of children with gender issues. But I think, yeah, the way that you've approached it, the way that you've kind of unpacked it and kind of helped yourself through it, could be really inspiring to people who have children. We don't have many of dysphoric people themselves listening to this. I think most of them, like we all did, go down the ideology route to deal with it. But hopefully, slowly
Yeah,
that
we've
changes.
all already been there.
Yep, exactly. Yep. But I think your story is it could be very helpful for a lot of people on how to, on how to deal with it. So thank you very much.
Hope so. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Transparency Podcast. If you enjoy our content, please help out our algorithm by hitting like or subscribe. If you'd like to make a donation, follow the link to our PayPal account. On behalf of the Gender Dysphoria Alliance, thanks for your support.